All right, let's get right into this, Rob. And the story of the day, we said it. Brian Flores lawsuit against the NFL alleging racism, which nobody denies.
Except for the NFL 2 hours after the lawsuit came out.
Yeah, I mean, what they're going to have to backtrack.
How embarrassing is that, Chris?
Yeah,
like they didn't even say, like, we're going to investigate.
Right.
You know, these are very serious allegations against our teams and our league. We'll investigate. They just said it was without merit. 2 hours after the lawsuit, they just dismissed it. Without merit? Come on.
They're not going to be able to dismiss it. And even if we'll see, obviously, in the court of law, you got to prove things. You need a lot of evidence. But whether that, no matter what comes of it in court, Rob, this has brought major attention. And people knew. We all know. It's obvious. It's the elephant in the room. And I don't even know if that's accurate because it's right in front of our face, right? One black coach out of 32. And this just brings it more to the forefront, Rob, and it's brought it to mainstream, like non-football America. What was he on today, Rob G? He was on CBS.
CBS this morning, right?
CBS this morning talking about it. He was also on ESPN. So we got some sound. Brian Flores making the media rounds, but here he is.
It was a range of emotions: humiliation, disbelief, anger. I've worked so hard to get to where I am in football, to become a head coach. Put 18 years in this league, and it was to go on what was going to be what felt like or what was a sham interview. I was hurt. The Rooney Rule is intended to give minorities an opportunity to sit down in front of ownership, but I think what it's turned into is an instance where guys are just checking the box, and that's been the case. I've been on some interviews in the past that. Where I've had that feeling. There's always no way to know for sure, but
Let me say this, Rob. Believe it or not, my mother-in-law, who she was like a superintendent or a supervisor in the school system in New York.
Right.
She actually was a supervisor at the school that Brian Flores attended in Brooklyn. I think she said PS 332, I think it was.
Okay.
I may mix up the numbers, but it was something like PS 332. When he was in junior high, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And she just could not, and she's not a sports fan at all. She obviously heard about the lawsuit, but she doesn't follow sports. She said he was, even at that time, he was a great young man. She said he was smart. We obviously know he was smart. He went to Boston College. But he was intelligent. He was smart.
Right.
He was respected by everybody. He could hang. Everybody respected him. He was cool. Obviously, he's a good athlete. But he also was like a leader and ethical. And, his parents kept him in line. And he and his brother, she said, were doing the right thing. And so she's really
not surprised that he would sacrifice himself for the better good of society. And that's,
she said he had that in his character even at that age. And
everybody's not willing to do that. That's why a lot of things stay the same, and we all complain about it. But what have I said a million times, Chris? The only thing worse than the bad people doing bad things are when good people don't say anything or turn their heads and allow bad people to do bad things. And the good people have to stand up and say, this isn't right. I'm thoroughly yes, we've talked about this forever. Bravo, for Brian Flores to be man enough, Chris, to take on this enormous battle that's going to ensue with the NFL and its lawyers and them trying to cover up stuff and write a check and tell them to go away so that you never coach football.
Taking that.
No, and
you know what I mean?
Can see
he's gone this far,
Right. This is a guy who realizes that I just can't sit silent anymore. And you applaud him and you just brought up what? Jerry Jones? What did Jerry say?
Jerry admitted, I don't know the exact quote, maybe Rob G has it, but he admitted there's a problem.
There's no doubt.
You can't help but admit that there's a freaking problem.
Right. And that's what
you said. We were talking earlier, Rob. Major League Baseball
has more black
8% black players. 8%. And they have more black managers at this moment than the NFL.
Right.
They got
Just
at least
period.
2. We were trying to think of them off the top of our head.
They got 2, and
they probably
then,
got
Chris,
more than 2.
And then there's a couple other Hispanic managers as well. So minority managers are way more, and you don't have the same numbers. That's the thing that's bad about it. And no one's saying that 75% of the coaches have to be black. That's not the argument.
No.
It's about equal opportunity when those guys are done playing. Where's their opportunity and their chance? That's all. We're good enough to play, but we can't put together a team, Chris, or coach a team. Why? There's no other reason other than racism.
Period.
There's
no
other
and I
reason.
heard somebody say, I don't know that this is racism or what. It's racism.
I got Jerry Jones' quote.
I don't think the owners have had a meeting and said we don't want a lot of black coaches in the league or we're not going to hire black coaches. I don't think that. And I don't think any of the owners, or most of them for sure, don't have a problem personally with a black person. Like, I'm sure they befriend the players and all that.
They write $1 million checks to these guys.
Yes, racism is about power.
Yes.
And access. And you are limiting the power and the access of African Americans. That's what this is about, and you're doing it because of their race. Whether it's in your front of your mind or the back, it's there. And so this is racism. And one thing, Rob, we talked about it yesterday. What upsets African Americans is this moving the goalpost. Right. A few years ago, it was, you got to be a coordinator. So you
coordinator.
Yeah, you got some. First coordinator. You got some defensive coordinators who are black. 11 actually right now, which is a good number. But then it was like, oh yeah, remember a few years ago, Rob? It was but offense. It's an offensive league now.
You got to know how to call plays,
right? You got to be and we just don't have a lot of offensive coordinators. Then we get Eric Bieniemy and Byron Leftwich, and
they're not really calling the plays. Are they? They got the position, but are they really calling the play? Like now, all of a sudden,
now that there's now Zac Taylor didn't call plays. Now that there's no next step you have to get to that you can say, once you get here, right? There's no next step. Now it's just you know what? We just don't want to hire y'all because we'll go to high school. In Houston, we're looking at this high school quarterbacks coach, Josh McCown. We just don't want to hire y'all. Or you know what? The guy that cheated a few years ago in Denver.
We'll give him another
11 and 17 record. Belichick. Yeah, okay. Belichick's assistants haven't done very well, but we just don't want to hire y'all. All right. Yeah. I mean, we going to college. We going to college. Cliff Kingsbury. I know he had a 35-40 record at Texas Tech.
Yep.
But he had a cup of coffee. Not even good football. They ain't even playing good teams.
But he had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay. Remember, that got him his job.
So let me give you these 2 things. We just don't want y'all. They're not saying it, obviously, to the face, but that's what this is.
And here it is, Chris. Zac Taylor didn't call plays with the Rams. He's coaching the Bengals. Nathaniel Hackett, who they just didn't call plays in Green Bay. Now he's the Broncos coach.
Yep.
So that's not true. And here's Jerry Jones's quote. He was at the Senior Bowl. Quote, I can see it's an area, one of many, that we can do better. The area has some good attention. This is obvious if you look through that. The league and the coaches are trying to improve there. I mean, so he's admitting it ain't over the top. Like he ain't going to say we're racist and we're doing this. But it is obvious, and I think you're right. There's no other way of really pussyfooting around it. I just, because you can't make there are no guys there. Well, there's no. Eric Bieniemy's been sitting there for 3 years waiting for his job. Chris, 3 years.
Rob, exactly. And not every offensive coordinator, I'm exaggerating, but when you're an offensive coordinator for a successful team, you typically, and the defensive coordinator as well for that matter, you typically get a new, look at Buffalo. Everybody wanted Dayball. Right? Because they were successful. All right, Brian Flores. Why has the NFL been so slow to hire African Americans in positions of power, front office, coaching, things like that?
Let's start with Seth in Chicago. You're on the Odd Couple Fox Sports Radio. What up, Seth?
Hey, guys. How you doing? Love the
Good.
show.
How are
Listen
you?
to you guys every night.
Thank you, buddy.
Hey, but I respectfully disagree in regards to it being racism. I think there's a lot of variables that it could be, but without, like, really hard evidence. I'm not saying it's not out there, but without, like, something on paper or something said or recorded. And I would just make the statement or just a question or a thought, like if Mike Tomlin or Coach Tomlin was out there and available, I don't think there'd be a team that's looking for a coach that won't pick him up. And with only 32 positions,
Well, wait a minute.
coaches.
Go ahead.
Well, just with the 32 teams or positions, there's just not a lot of positions. And I think everybody should deserve equal opportunity, but the outcomes can always they never.
But here's the
come out
problem.
the same.
Here's the problem. When you're hiring guys that are less qualified,
Yes,
and passing over guys that are more qualified, and one thing that happens in those situations, a common denominator, is the white guys are getting hired with a little bit of experience, and the black guys are getting passed over with a lot of experience.
and Chris, Seth's point, which is the one that a lot of white people, and I don't know, Seth, if you're white or not, you stand on. You don't have any. Is it in paper? Is it proof? Do you have?
Right.
Chris, people are convicted of murder all the time. They don't have the murder weapon or the body.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Don't tell me you have to have the owner on tape saying, I ain't hiring
Right.
that N-word in
Right.
order for you to buy in that
Thank
there's
you.
something going on. Do not.
you.
That is not
Absolutely.
true.
And this is systemic. That's
Yes.
what this is. You know why there are no black owners in the NFL for the most part, Rob? There's only a handful of there's not very many African Americans that can afford to buy an NFL team.
To have
why
that wealth.
though? Why? That's historical racism. Because generational wealth has been almost impossible for most blacks to obtain in this country.
And Chris, can we say this too?
There's a reason all the owners are white for the most part, and it has to do with the history of this country. And I'm going to say this quickly, Rob.
Go ahead.
I am not a diversity just for diversity's sake guy. I mean, I do think there's a value in diversity, but if whites had just worked harder, been smarter, prioritize things better than African Americans, and they had just earned this and done everything fair and square, then fine. You know what? We got to do better as blacks. But that's not the case. This was built on slavery
and Chris,
Jim Crow and discriminating against African Americans. It was. I'm not saying whites don't work hard and don't have challenges too. I'm just saying, don't neglect the history of this country. It wasn't done on the up and up.
And Seth, you need to go look up a story that the Philadelphia Inquirer did, Chris, on Mellon Bank. And you want to talk about a paper trail? Black people with good credit were turned down for mortgages, Chris. It was an unbelievable paper trail. White people with bad credit got mortgages way more than black people with good credit.
Right.
That's what Chris is talking about. Building wealth, home ownership if you're denied a mortgage.
Yep, which has happened during redlining.
Exactly. So, all right, let's get to Jerome and Charleston. Let's squeeze them in real quick.
We're not getting dog sick on this and stuff, but it's still there.
Jerome in Charleston, you're on the Odd Couple Fox Sports Radio.
I just wanted to say that prejudice and bigotry is what drove me out of the military. I was in for like 9 years, and it got so bad on me that I just had to leave and come back home. Prejudice got me thrown out of my mom's hospital room a couple of years ago. My mom was very sick, and I had to take her and put her in the hospital. And I walked in, I was sitting there, and she was mad at me. And the guy walked in, and just like that, he said, "You're gone." I said, "Man, I'm 65 years old. I've never been thrown out of anywhere before."
Right.
I got thrown out of her hospital room, man. And as I was leaving, I told the guy, and he didn't look like me, okay? I told him, I said, "The only reason you're throwing me out of here because you're black." And all he could say was, "Well, I got black in my family." I said, "Yeah, right." And that was that. And the next thing I know, I was being investigated for elderly abuse. My mom passed away in July. I worship the ground my mom walked on. Okay, I'm getting choked up talking about her. I miss her every day, man. So, I love my mom. I would never do anything to hurt her. She was 95 years old. I've been taking care of my mom for 38 years. That's why one of the other reasons why I got out of the military. I miss her every day. And for them to throw me out of that room like that, man, I just can't forget.
No
we hear
doubt.
you. Wow,
No
you
doubt.
can hear
There's
it in
a lot
his
of
voice.
stuff, and you can hear the pain in his voice,
Yep.
Chris.